Thank you very much, Professor Shaw. Because of time, I think we could take a couple of quick questions. So any questions from the floor?
There's no 10-minute questions. 1-minute question.
Yeah, the one, yeah, black jacket. You want somebody give him the microphone, please. No.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Professor Scopes. Thank you very much for being here with us today. My question to you is, some scholars have compared the recent credit boom in China and the prevalence of shadow banks with the situation before the subprime crisis in the United States earlier. Do you think such comparison reasonable?
In part, yes. In part, no. Okay, I think it's very interesting because don't forget about the restrictions on what Chinese banks can pay depositors. When we had inflation becoming at 4 and 4.5% in China, then banks, ICBC, other banks, had to figure out ways they can keep their depositors if they can only they're only allowed to pay them 3.5%. Because when you have inflation of 4.5%, you're not making any real rate, you're actually losing money by investing in the banks. So a lot of the wealth management products were actually, in my view, is a substitute or way for the banks to retain customers to actually pay them more competitive rates. Just the same way in the United States is when we had restrictions called Regulation Q in the 70s as to how much interest could be paid on bank deposits, we had money market funds or other shadow banking type things develop. So I don't know to what extent that's the case, that they're just alternative ways in which they can have more competitive products given constraints. The second issue is that if you look at lending of the shadow banking market to various constituents, you find that they're not really lending a lot to SMEs. Okay, the SMEs are still starved for credit either by the banks or through the shadow market. And but one thing is a silly rule in China is that you have to, if you get a one-year loan or a loan from the bank for 1 year, for example, that you have to borrow, you have to pay back the loan each year. You can't just roll it over and say, can I have a loan now for another year? So you have to borrow money to pay back the loan for 1 day or whatever it is, okay, before you get a new loan. And so as a result of that, a lot of the shadow market tends to facilitate those one-year loans or those term loans, that short one. Now, your question, which is I say yes and no, is the question of the real estate market and to what extent contractors are using the shadow market or to borrow money for construction loans for their homes. Now, for building new real estate construction, whether it's office buildings or apartment buildings. And that's the part that I'll know to what extent as the shadow market is coming down or the wealth management products are coming down, that those loans that the contractors had could be refinanced. If there's real value under them, okay, then obviously it can be refinanced. But if it's it's again my credit issue. That credit should be extended as a byproduct of investment, not as the generating force of investment. I shouldn't borrow and then invest. I should have investment first and then think about whether I should finance it by equity or borrowing and if there's value underlying it. So we'll see in that dimension to what extent it is. I don't think, in my view, that, and we've had, as interest rates have increased in China, the prices of the second-tier cities, homes and other real estate, has tended to come down as the interest rates have gone up, which put a clamp on it, while you have cities such as Beijing and Shanghai has had tremendous growth in wealth and income. So the housing prices have gone up around 14%, while incomes over the last 10 years have gone up about 13%. So it's not as though housing prices have gone up so dramatically. As we know in China, you have to put up quite a lot of money as a down payment. It's hard to borrow a lot of money to actually buy the real estate itself. So answer to your question is we'll have to see. There's a lot of payday loans in China, a lot of, which could be somewhat Ponzi-oriented, the idea of borrowing and then paying off depositors and then borrowing again to pay off the next depositors. And those could be in trouble, but it's a good question whether the real estate market is perfectly solid or there's areas in which there's frenzy and they'll have to come down. It's always hard to know when a bubble is. After the fact, we always know when there's a bubble, but where's the bubble now? And that's, and obviously books are written after the fact. Oh, this person saw the bubble, we made a lot of money on the bubble, but it's very hard when you're in the middle to know where it is. Thank you for the question.
Okay, any last questions? The one in pink, the lady.
Thank you, Professor Scholz. One simple question to you. As you said, technology would be one of the leading factors of an economic growth. So I would like to know, in particular, what technology would you look for investment opportunity? Thank you.
What technology I would what?
Go for to make big money.
Which technology in particular would you look out for investment opportunity? Thank you.
I already have my fortune, so I'm trying to keep it. Keep my wife from spending it. I think that it's a great question. I really think that obviously the technology I would go for now if I were young is I would understand everything about water I possibly could, because I think water is the scarcest resource in our world at this time. And it's going to, and if you look at China, for example, in terms of if people are going up the value chain, they're going to want more meat, they're going to want pure water, they're going to have irrigation problems, cities are getting larger. It'd be a terrific application of technology, whether it's purification of water, repotabilization of water, ideas of water sensors, ideas of thinking about the idea of drip irrigation systems, all those things. So just, to me, if I were betting on one thing, it's like Mr. Robinson, what would you do? Plastics. I think water is very important at this time for everything. And technology applying to water. And alternative, like for example, you cool, right now, to take a power plant, you have to cool them, okay? And there's so much water that's lost and so much water that's used inefficiently. So the question is, how do you cool things? Maybe there's alternative ways to cool things in terms of technology. All those will be embedded. That's one side. Also medical technology as well, because our population gets older. You got to think about people. And as I said, the other ones. So the idea of medical technology, I really believe that if you can extend your life 1 year because of the exponential growth in technology, you extend your life even further. So my job is to stay young until I'm 150, and then if my friends are not there anymore, then I'm willing to die.
Since the question is so interesting, I'll take one more. Anyone? Okay, the lady in the blue jumper.
Good afternoon, Professor Martin Schulz. My question is, with the new leadership of China taking off, the economic growth plan primarily proposes can be put into practice more effectively. And the Shanghai Free Trade Zone is regarded as a part of the plan. And under this condition, what's your opinions about the outlook of the free trade zone, and what advices do you want to give to it for a better future? Thank you.
It depends on the price they're willing to pay me for the advice. I'm a business guy, Don't talk about what I'm going to give them. It's going to be take. Actually, the free trade zone is going to be a financial trade zone, right? I mean, that's different from the Shenzhen trade zone, but I think it's going to be the experimentation on liberalizing China's financial system. And the issue I have in finance, money is like water. It flows pretty easily. I'm sorry, I'm using water today a lot. Different type of water. Basically, so if you're going to experiment in liberalization, okay, and what we want to do in the world is have the capital moving to the best places. So we have free movement of capital from China to Europe or the United States for investment, and vice versa. And that's one thing that's going to happen. So we have movement of capital. We have ways in which banks can learn. You see, the functions that the free trade zone in Shanghai will try to perform over time and grow in. How do they enhance transactions? Can they make them more efficient, more faster, and more idiosyncratic? And that'll allow for transactions to be more efficient in China. 2 is financing investment. Investment that I don't have. You're always bringing teams together with capital. That's what we do in our society, and I think that'll be beneficial for China to be able to figure out how to finance investment, whether for small investments or larger investments. And if China is going to build the sustainable cities of the future, which means there's going to be a high-tech inventions of solar and other ways to have clean cities, in my view, and cities that we can all enjoy and live in, there have to be public-private partnerships. The capital is not there to do it, and we have to figure out ways to do that and to make things more efficient. So financing projects, okay, saving products for the future. You got to build an infrastructure and have so people are going to retire and save if they're going to move up the wealth chain. Either they save domestically or internationally and save for their retirement, save for the education of their children, save for contingencies. These products will have to be built as part of the structure. And that means as well that we're going to have to finance companies, we're going to have an ability for risk transfer or for hedging and creating markets in which people are going to decide what risk to keep, what risk to get rid of, to evaluate risks. So credit has to be given to small companies or to individuals in an efficient way so they can spend now or save for the future. All those things will be built in the Shanghai Free Trade Zone. And market prices are great signals, and whether and also how we reduce asymmetric information. China will have to learn how to do that and make its financial system deeper and richer and with much more understanding. So all of those things that I talk about, I see are just great growth areas for Shanghai.
Thank you very much. I hope you all have got enough information to update your investment plan for the next 5 years. But do remember to send Professor Shou a check.
If you're successful. Don't send me the bill if you're not successful. I want a free option.
So now may I invite Professor Guo to present a souvenir to Professor Shou to thank him for a great lecture today.
Oh, so I'll use the computer.
It's a 2-person game.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So thank you very much for coming for a distinguished lecture, and I hope you have a good evening. Thank you. Bye.